This is Enthusiastic Women, the podcast, Season 2, broadcasting from the Enthusiastic Women Worldwide headquarters, where every day we birth success. I'm Shannon. I'm happy to welcome my friends Judy Carter and Samantha Stokes to this episode of the podcast. Now, I do have to put in the one caveat that things have gotten very real here at the Enthusiastic Women Network because Samantha Stokes is in our Enthusiastic sound booth with me. Our good friend Judy Carter is not.
I'm calling in remotely from home.
Yes, that we are in the midst, like everyone else in the universe, we are in the midst of the reality that is now the coronavirus in America. Right, Sam?
Yes, we are.
Yes, and so with all of the things that have been going on and things that have been canceled and the way that it was affecting our reality, it just seemed to make most sense based upon what is going on in the real life of Miss Judy Carter for her to be able to call into the podcast. And Samantha and I are here in the same room, but we are quite some distance away, but that would have happened anyway.
And we've disinfected.
Correct. And so we actually as a team had a discussion on how do we do our entertainment-based Enthusiastic Woman podcast in this particular framework, and what do we talk about? And when we were having this little particular conversation, a lot of it came back to, well, the topics that we talk about are real world problems and conversations, and that has not changed, right?
True, absolutely. Yeah, right. We're still living in the world, having the same experiences that everybody is having and being impacted by the same social circumstances.
It's surprising how quickly this impacted so much of what we do.
Yep.
I mean, I'm the one that is full on gig mentality in my work, but the way that it maybe had affected both of you from that, am I going to be working from home? What do I do? And it did have just an interesting impact on each of us, and that's something that we'll cover throughout the episode today as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what we always cover on the Enthusiastic Women podcast is the way that we as human beings and a social enterprise end up responding to different things that are in our ecosystems. And so this made a lot of sense because, of course, so much of the discussion is based around coronavirus, but it's also based upon how is that affecting us, not only generationally, but affecting us as far as people who are consumers in this particular economy. And so a lot of the things that we normally talk about seemed even more topical based upon what has happened really over the last week and our particular relationship to what's going on here seemed very appropriate for us to have this conversation. Does that sound right, ladies?
Absolutely right. Things have gotten,
Absolutely.
the real has gotten very real.
The real has gotten very real. And so we are still going to have our primary pillars that you hear. We're going to have our product displacement. In today's product displacement, what we've decided to do is we're going to talk about basically how Netflix and other streaming services have managed to pivot into what is now the coronavirus mayhem. And then we're going to have our regular segment, Did You See This? And Did You See This? We have an interesting story of coronavirus product hoarders and price gougers and what we think of them. And then in Does This Make Me Old? And Does This Make Me Old? Of course, we are going to cover fake news and who is being affected by it. Does that sound good, Judy?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, I'm calling myself, I am socially isolated, but my new term for this is called sparkling isolation. Because I don't know that I'm truly socially isolated when I can still do things like be on this podcast, continue on Twitter, have my fabulous Instagram, Snapchat with everybody. So I guess it's called sparkling isolation in my case, right, ladies?
I agree.
Yes. So, Judy, you are socially isolating, but you are digitally touching everyone everywhere.
Ew.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what? So many things that we have to say right now sounds a little bit more gross and salacious than it needs to be, but it's just part of our lexicon. It's what we have to do.
Less germy than we would like.
Right.
Or maybe more germy than we would like, I should say.
Right. But I do appreciate that we're able to have this conversation. We do want to encourage everybody that's listening. There is a lot of very valuable information out there as far as what you can do for you and your family and your loved ones to stay healthy and to actually weather all of these storms. That includes information about your physical health, your mental health, and your financial health. We encourage you to look at all of that information out there and do what you can to make sure that you stay in the know appropriately. We also encourage you to make sure that you stay safe, healthy, and whatever we can do to make sure that we help our friends and our family and our loved ones out there. We know it's a very anxious time. It's a very anxious time, and so we're going to do what we can just in our small way to give you something a little bit more light to talk about, but also be part of the conversation. So does that sound good to everybody?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go ahead.
Good to me.
We're going to go into our first segment today. product displacement. Product displacement normally brought by something kind of fake and made up in our Enthusiastic Women Network, but today we've decided that it's just too real. So we're just going to do this. So let's talk with this particular product displacement. As someone who also not only lives in the Enthusiastic Women Network, but also lives in the geekly realms, a lot of our favorite television shows have been pushed to the fall. There are so many things that are out there that they're like, okay, this particular show is on hold. Even if you don't live in the geek world, like a lot of the things that we are expecting to be part of our day, our weekly viewing pleasure, like The Bachelorette. The Bachelorette, they put that show on hold. We heard Amazing Race is on hold. So many of these things are being pushed. And I think that that's very disheartening for a lot of people in the entertainment industry, because we're also being told to socially isolate and stay home. So some of our streaming services are faring much better during the coronavirus than we are as normal human beings. For instance, Netflix and those kind of streaming companies, hey man, there's been a giant boom for them. And I think that as far as the way that they are marketing their products, if you look at what Netflix has decided to do, they have added a bunch of things back into their roster that they were taking down. There have been story after story that even like Disney Plus, which people were kind of like, do I really need it other than The Mandalorian? The fact that they put out a story that said, you know what, we're going to put Frozen 2 out for all you people sooner rather than later. And they had added in back a number of Marvel properties and those kind of shows. They really are doing well, which I think is interesting, but also appropriate. What do you both think?
Netflix is uniquely different than a lot of the other media companies, though, because Netflix does not rely on advertising revenue
Fair enough.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
Disney, Facebook, Hulu, all depend on advertising revenue. So as of Wednesday, Netflix stock price was actually up,
right,
where other companies' stock prices were down. So Netflix is uniquely, out of all entertainment and internet companies, even Google's stock price is going to go down in this because they need advertising revenue. Disney needs advertising revenue. Disney Plus is just one small thing. Netflix is the one entertainment internet company that's uniquely positioned to do well throughout this coronavirus, and it's the advertising revenue.
Right. And I think it's also interesting because when we think about things from an advertising revenue standpoint, it's also a matter of so many of the larger companies that do these type of campaigns, they're on hold not just because they're deciding whether they should have their employees in-house or out of house. They're like, well, what's the world going to look like? So they seem to be putting pause on a lot of the programming that they normally would start. So, you know, even if you, like some of my corporate clients that I would do, like, for instance, voiceover work for, are on, they're on pause because they're like, well, we're not sure what our initiatives are going to be 2 months from now, because they're clearly not the same. Like if I worked for a local company that was doing a big hiring boom, a lot of those things are like, yeah, maybe we're not hiring anybody right now. And I think that that's interesting, and one of the ripple effects we're going to see as all of these economic corrections continue to happen.
Yes, and I wonder if one of those ripple effects is, especially as some of the live broadcast television shows, like late night shows, go into hiatus for a while, if people will turn more and more to streaming services, and if they'll start to, I don't know if this is hoarding, but just out of a panic of not having fresh content, begin increasing the number of streaming services that they utilize. So the Netflixes, the Hulus, there's a whole spectrum of them. I wonder if usage of that will go up, or the number of services people subscribe to will increase right now.
Which, again, as someone who kind of works in the industry, one of the frustrating things for me, and not to sound predatory, but a friend of mine who also works on a TV show as well, we were both thinking, well, this would honestly be, we could get traction and we'd have better ratings if we could actually produce our show. And so trying to figure out what it looks like of, well, we want to create this content and we know that it would be of value to people, but how can we safely do that?
Right.
And so, especially if you have a show that is based on having a crew go from one part of the country to another part of the country, or even going from one part of town. Can I film on location? How does that look? Right. Conversations that live performers like myself, that what we've been having is, well, when people are, once we flatten the curve, which we are all in favor of, I'm in favor of doing that, and I understand why we had to kind of get to this point where it was full stop, tell everybody to stay away from each other. But once we do get back to the point that people probably just because we're human beings and out of sheer boredom, do need to find safe ways to leave the house.
Sure.
Does it turn into, well, for me as a mid-sized performer, instead of trying to get 200 people to show up to my show, am I trying to get 50 so I can still maintain that social distancing that we have now? Does it go, if we say, okay, let's say on the good side of things, 3 months from now, we can leave the house again. Let's just say, let's hope that this is like, we flatten it that quick.
Yes.
So, but in 3 months from now, am I going, you know what, a good crowd is 75 people because I can spread them all out? Or are we thinking that we'll,
goodness.
you know, are
Yeah.
we, you know, and that's what it is. I'm thinking about shows right now. We're recording and we're in March, we're deep in the Ides of March, but the show that I'm thinking about in May, I normally would go, if I had 200 people at this show, that would be great. Now I'm already thinking, yeah, maybe I should just, because of the size of the venue, try and just plan on having 75 because I'll be able to spread them out and at least I'll be able to have a show.
Sure. And what is that? That's a new model. What does the marketing look like for that?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing to think about. And as somebody who watches the internet, and also for work, I create and manage online content. There was already an early story on BuzzFeed today about, if you've already watched everything on Netflix, here's some really good shows and content creators to watch on YouTube. Another thing to think about when you're considering different models and how people can view. I used to work for a large tech company out of Silicon Valley, and they do like all these big tech companies do, like when you see Tim Cook come on and talk about like the new products for Apple or whatever, they have these really large conferences, and part of those conferences are seminars and things for engineers and everybody to learn. And a lot of it is about, you know, tens of thousands of people coming together and doing those conferences in real life. But a lot of it is about online learning content.
Right.
And I've worked a lot with tech companies about doing online learning content and about doing sessions, part online learning, part live learning. And I don't know, I mean, maybe as part of this, it's like thinking about, and like Microsoft has this, they have like Microsoft University, and you can go to Microsoft personal conferences. You can also learn from their experts online, and people pay for that content. This is the thing that a lot of tech companies make money off of. So maybe there's some sort of model where entertainment creators, it's another kind of content. You see RuPaul doing this now, where you can learn from RuPaul at his masterclass. Maybe there's a way where there's content that you create online and people make money from that.
But I also agreed with you.
The model is, but there's a way, you know, like I said, I've done this for tech companies. Maybe there's a way that the entertainment people need to monetize this more too than just be always in person. And this was for years, because it wasn't always online. It was always online. It was always in person. And people would say, Judy, how's a way that we can start doing this online? And how can we, you know, have people pay for that too?
And Judy,
you know?
I agree with you. And there were some, you know, a lot of us, that was the reason why we did have YouTube channels, and we did have some sort of shareable content. And I think that there, you know, at the time, a lot of us were using that more of, or from a position of, this will help drive traffic and help me stay relevant to the point that people would want to come to one of these things. Exactly. Right. So it wasn't my primary way. I'm a professional creator of content, but it was more something to put on my website so that people would go and say, oh, now I will go see them in person. And so it might turn into, that is less of what we're doing, because you're trying to curate those audience in a different way. And you're right. I was very fortunate that I was able to go, well, I was already kind of pivoting some of my information past that, because that's how we were using our platforms to build a market outside of a town, outside of a state. That's how we were trying to get a bigger footprint anyway. So I think people are leaning into that. And I've had some friends online that had said, hey, if you need a Patreon, if you already had a YouTube site, if you had all these things, let's make sure we communicate that to everybody, because there might be some other ways that we could do it. So we'll see how that goes. I am not completely prepared for that.
I think it won't just be online content won't just be marketing in the future.
Right.
It will be like a Netflix model where content is king. It is valuable, and people pay to see it. That will be the future.
Do you think as people feel like that they've consumed everything on Netflix that they're going to watch right now, and everything on Hulu, and they start to get a little bit potentially kind of desperate to find new content, do you think that'll lead to a rise in things like people just live streaming their lives?
Yes.
And putting on, and other people
because
watching it?
Because that's already a thing. It's already a thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, when YouTube turned it so that it wasn't just, videos, but you could live stream it. I think a lot of those people are continuing that because there's less, before you like, this is boring. I'm just watching this person play this video game. Now we're like, well, what else do I have to do? I might as well watch this person play this video game. So the Twitches of the world and the things that were already at the forefront of that, I think it'll probably turn into that. Like I caught myself because I loosely Snapchat, but I ended up watching Bitmoji TV last night because I hadn't watched that in forever, but I'm like, yeah, I would like to see myself as a little video.
A friend of mine and I are obsessed with it. We like send them to each other and talk about what was on our channel.
Right.
I watch all these different things because I'm like a little sponge of what's happening, what will be next, what's happening in the corporate world, what's happening in, it's so fascinating. But
agreed.
This will be to see if it starts to flip it.
Right.
So,
but what if it was me putting my groceries away? Is it going to hit like that level of people are so bored they just have to see somebody doing something?
Might be somebody. Well, I mean, they have that. They have like in Asia, it's really popular to like. That's how what's it called? MSR or whatever, ASMR.
Yes.
People eating and people putting on makeup
and just pushing in slime, just pushing their fingers in the slime slowly for hours.
Right. As long as it's kind of quiet.
Right. You never know, but I think this also, and I know that we are flash forwarding to additional dystopia here, but there is a matter of, especially when you add in the social distancing. One of the reasons why I was reaching out to a lot of my friends is that therapy, my friend, as he put it, is just going stir crazy because he's been home the last 2 weeks. And so that watching people go through their day-to-day routines, I think is part of what normalizes it because other people are going, I want to feel like I'm around somebody. Well, watching them brush their teeth and do something in grocery shop is at least you feel like you're in someone. And we already had some shows that were pivotal in making that interesting again, like the phenomenon that that is Netflix of Love is Blind. If you guys haven't seen that show,
yes, I have.
But just watching people hang out in a room and it's a lot of just watching pretty people hang out in a room.
Yeah. Circle. Did you watch Circle?
Oh
that
no.
Was even worse. Oh my gosh, that's the one where they took the people and they couldn't see each other, but they could message each other. But we had to watch them be isolated in each of their own apartments and. That's another one that's just fascinating on Netflix. Netflix has a number of these reality shows that you just can like watch people do nothing but live.
That reminds me, I can't remember what this is called, but it's, I think on Netflix, a series of videos of people eating foods that make kind of nice sounds.
Interesting.
Like the crunch of biting into fried chicken, things like that.
That's ASMR.
Is that
ASMR?
ASMR?
People are obsessed with it.
Yes. It's fascinating. And so it's interesting that we didn't know what was going to push us into this, but I think a lot of people kind of saw it happening already. And that was why we were having those counter-programming studies about why you need to be around other people and why people felt lonely and how there was these epidemics of those kind of things. And now we've been full thrust into it because they're going, if you're around people, you're all gross. And and hopefully we get to the, but I mean, that's summing it up. I mean, I know I'm just, I'm real talking it, but as someone that worked in these giant venues, they were gross. And so we don't have the facilities to figure out how to make them less gross in mass. So so in the interim, we're like, everybody stay away from each other until we figure out how to not make these venues gross. Because, okay, look, we've made jokes, and I'm going to use this as an example because it's the grossest of the millennial things that we make fun of. Coachella. How much had we made? We had clowned Coachella as being a
Petri dish.
A Petri dish. I think we called it cesspool. Why did you put on your festival clothes to go hang out in there? And we were talking about how they had these terrible conditions for the workers. It was all the humanity. And now they're going, well, we can't have it because they were not prepared to make it not disgusting. And we reveled in the fact that some things, because we wanted them to feel authentic, like our friends that work at things like the Renaissance Festival, they were just gross, but we made it feel quaint that it was gross when it was just part of the experience of going out and being in something that's gross. I remember when I was younger and I would go to things like Warped Tour and all these things and you're hanging out in a field. The last thing I want to do now is hang out in a field with people who didn't bring hand sanitizer. I'm just real talking.
Like Burning Man.
Oh, we had already said it was gross.
Oh my God. That Burning Man is just like medieval ages if they were doing artwork.
If somebody came there
Burning Man is gross on multiple different kinds of levels.
Right. So unfortunately,
not just physically gross or medically gross. It's sort of socially gross. The people are gross. I
Right.
don't know if there's anything I like about Burning Man.
exactly.
Right. No, it's like Mad Max. That's all Burning Man is.
There was somebody when Judy and I were both when we were still doing our dating profiles before we decided that we didn't want to talk to strangers right now. I mean, honestly, that's a joke, but we were honestly just too busy, and we're like, well, that turned out that we were too busy to talk to strangers because now, ew, yuck.
The timing was good. You guys had like a psychic sense, right?
Yeah.
We're like, maybe we should shut down our dating profiles.
Well, let's isolate for a while.
Exactly. It all worked out. But one of the ones that I had shown you guys was a guy that was out Burning Man. And remember how we went, absolute full stop no. Just because we knew he was at Burning Man. We're like, I don't care what kind of nice car you have and what you do. The worst. So
You've been Lord of the Fliesing it.
right. So
on that note, we should probably move to our next topic. I saw the funniest tweet this morning. It
Yes.
was like, do you think the government's going to have a bailout plan for all the dating apps?
oh yeah, because now we're like, no, not happening at all.
No, thank you, government.
Bail out lots of other things
bail
first.
out Tinder.
No, they may let that sit for a while. We'll be okay. But you are right, Judy. We should go ahead and move on to our next topic today so we can go ahead and cover some other things. I appreciate everybody joining us. Hopefully we are not too loud in your eardrums as you are socially isolating yourself. But as usual, when we do talk about our subject matters here, we do have this. Did you see this? Did you see this? And remind me, who has this next article? Do you have this one, Sam?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me start by giving a personal anecdote before I talk about the article. I want to talk about Target.
Yes.
So roughly 2.5 weeks ago, when things started to look like we were moving in the direction, when we saw that the virus was getting more widespread and that we would have to start changing our behaviors, and there started to be maybe the initial list of things that you could stock up on.
Yes.
I went to Target on my normal weekly visit around that time, and I should mention that I am a really anxious person, so I'm always an early preparer. Like I will prepare to change lanes in traffic miles ahead of time. So I went to Target, like again, 2.5, 3 weeks ago.
You are a pre-prepper. That's what you are. I got it.
Prepper.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
And so everything was still pretty much fully stocked on the shelves at Target at that point. And I bought a few containers of Lysol wipes and some toilet paper and a few things. And I went to pay for my items. And there was somebody ahead of me. And as I had been through the store, I had looked at other people's carts just to see if other people were starting to stock up yet.
Yes. And so this is 2.5 weeks ago.
Roughly 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago. And I saw a few people who appeared to be starting to prep. Mainly, I could identify them by several bales of toilet paper in their carts, right? So I was in line at Target, and ahead of me, a woman was paying for her things, and she was talking to the cashier, and they were in a very animated discussion about how stupid it was that people were starting to stock up, and how this was just going to be like the flu. And then the woman paid and left, and I got up to pay for my things, and the cashier, I watched the wheels turn in her head as she started to put my things through, and she realized that I was one of those people, and she just paused for a second and said, "Gonna see any movies this weekend?" So anyway, that was about 2.5, 3 weeks ago.
She tried to just cover it up.
Yeah, she did. And then the next week, I went for my weekly shopping, and was paying attention to see if people were starting to prep, and then I could feel anxiety had risen.
Right.
There were fewer things on the shelves. A lot of toilet paper was gone. There was some still. There was some Clorox wipes still, but pretty much starting to be bought out. Then I was there yesterday.
Yes.
Pandemonium.
I agree.
Not a single paper item, whether it was dinner napkins, toilet paper, no bleach, no wipes, nothing. It was the shore and soup, other canned food, all gone. So I could see that this had really reached peak.
The soup shortage.
The soup was gone. So anyway, so that's been my experience is watching this panic kind of build. So then, Judy, you shared with us an article talking about several people who had bought huge supplies, like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of things like hand sanitizer and sanitary wipes, had started selling them on eBay and different places, Amazon, and for very elevated prices, right? They're price gouging. And they got away with it for a while, but then different entities like Amazon started to become aware of this and began to shut it down.
Judy, what do you think?
So this is a story from the New York Times. It has the title, "He has 17,700 bottles of hand sanitizer, nowhere to sell them."
Right.
It was very popular on Twitter yesterday. Multiple people posting it, lots of different responses. So this is a practice. When people do this, they'll go to, say, dollar stores. This
Yep.
particular guy with all this hand sanitizer went around all the areas around his state, bought hand sanitizer in dollar stores, very low prices, would buy hand sanitizer, say, $1, $2, $3, and then sell them for $20 to $40 each. Huge markup, maybe even more. It's called retail arbitrage.
Right.
It's a 21st century career. They buy up limited runs of things, or they look for things that are going to go and spike. The thing is this is against Amazon's rules of practices.
Correct.
Or sellers can do.
Mhm.
So if you are caught doing it, you're kicked off. This
Yeah.
isn't just like a bad thing or you shouldn't do things. This is like illegal to do.
And
It's
has
illegal to
been.
do on eBay.
Right.
It's illegal. So everybody who's been doing this has been kicked off of Amazon. They've been kicked off of eBay, and they're stuck with all this stuff. This is where it gets really morally bad. Like, one of the stories I was reading is this guy who bought like 10,000 masks for like he bought like 10 packs for $15, and then he resold them for like $40 to $50 each, and he made a $25,000 profit. And then there was like this other guy who bought like a 10 pack for $20 and then sold them for like $125, and then like he was selling them instantly. He made like 40 grand in profit.
Right.
Well, the hospitals can't get masks because
Right.
even the wholesalers are out now.
Right.
And these guys are sitting on it. I mean, that is almost like maybe the government needs to step in and say, in times of a national emergency, you can't buy things that hospitals need, sell them for $125 and then sit on them when the country's out. I mean, that's an actual massive problem.
So I guess one of the questions we're thinking about is, how are we feeling about that? Was this just a business opportunity that someone took advantage of, or is there more of a moral question around this?
The part that I will give them the industrious side of things. Okay. Especially the one story that we read, it was about these guys that had basically spent a lot of time curating these things, like driving all over the country, collecting these things.
Right.
Now, the altruistic person to me that wants things to we become better human beings in the times of crisis versus miserable human beings in the time of crisis is very disappointed in the fact that they raise this price. Because I do understand that scarcity allows you to set a market rate. Now, I do think that a lot of what we have going on right now, it could be more of even if they were, okay, we marked it up a bit. Okay, that's fair. You did spend some time doing this whole thing. The fact that I am not one of the people that is in the let's champion how much foresight these dudes had and then go, good on you. You get to do what you want. I'm not that much of a just dyed in the wool capitalist. I think they're miserable human beings if they're trying to gouge it.
Right.
Because we already had a scenario in this country where we were, as you said, this close to pandemonium. Why would we want to encourage that? So I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. You should be able to make money how you make money, but I'm not going to encourage you to be able to increase the pandemonium by pillaging regular people.
Right,
Because
right,
it doesn't do anything. If we have them that we now make health and safety a premium, then that's part of the problem, not the solution. If people cannot afford to go out and actually get toilet paper and wash their hands and do these things appropriately, it's just going to make things worse. So no, I'm not on board with it. I also find it frustrating. My brother-in-law,
Health workers at risk.
right? My brother-in-law works at a Target, and he sent us a family message, a group message that said this place is a crap show. Yes, right? Because people are because they don't have the proper information. Again, we encourage all of our enthusiastic listeners to go and get the proper information so we not get to a state of panic. But we are stockpiling odd things. And I think part of the reason why I think we're doing it is because even if you went to a normal retailer, like for myself and who it's me and I have one 12-year-old and a cat. So it's very difficult for me to buy small quantities of things that only 2 people need. So when we buy toilet paper, it automatically has to be 24 rolls. There's been times where I'm like, I don't need 12 rolls. I'll come back. But now if I want to stockpile, I have to buy 6 things of 12, not just 2. And so I ended up, because we stopped by the grocery store, I ended up stockpiling some things. And I don't want to say stockpiling because I didn't buy like 20 of them. I bought like 10 extra cans of cat food because I was concerned because so many other odd things were out that my normal things would eventually be so far down the supply chain because they're resupplying these major things that eventually my weird gluten-free, dairy-free bread would get behind on getting delivered because we had other deliveries that needed to be made first. Like, and my mom's husband is a truck driver. So they have them working round the clock. My brother-in-law that works at Target, as a store manager, he's saying that people are coming and taking things off pallets, so they can't even restock the shelves. They walk out with a pallet.
That's bananas.
It is, and I think that that's another thing.
I don't understand it.
Trying to encourage people to get the proper information so they can make wise choices and not have such a feeling of fear and we're not in this together, everything's going to go diagonal. And I don't know exactly how to communicate that, but I think that that's something that we could all use, is to figure out a way to get not as panic stricken as the current trickle of information has caused many people to do. So
I'll tell you, I mean, my daughter has a long-term illness, which is one of the reasons why I'm socially isolated. And right now, or sparkling. I'll use my fabulous term that I like better. But I mean, we already have a lot of hand sanitizer because we always kind of make people wash their hands when they come in the door, and we use hand sanitizer in the car, and we have hand sanitizer at the door, and we have hand sanitizer at the sink, and I have my son use hand sanitizer a lot. I didn't need to buy any of that, and I live in the city. I have a 3-bedroom apartment. I have myself and my 2 kids. I'm a single mom. And I have like 1 extra closet, and our kitchen isn't very big.
Right.
I can't stockpile anything.
That's how I
don't
felt.
have room for it. I don't stockpile a thing. I did end up buying some toilet paper on Amazon, but just one thing, because I just couldn't find, when I went there that day, they didn't have it, and I wasn't going to go driving around stores because ain't nobody got time for that. I don't need to be going to other stores. But then I was able to pick up like some Cottonelle, so I have like a 12 roll of Cottonelle, and I think I have like a box of like 3 of like toilet paper things coming from Amazon, going to be delivered tomorrow. That will last us for a very long time.
And I'm fortunate in that my mom and her husband are kind of like Sam. They're pre-preppers. They just kind of buy stuff in big groups anyway, just because I think, I don't even know why. Because I'm like, it's just
anxiety. For me, it's anxiety.
Yeah. So they just ended up, they have a bunch of stuff. So I go, well, like a friend of mine said that he was going to one of the big box stores today. And he said, ask me if I needed anything. I was like, well, if things happen to be there, get me one as well. But one, because I probably will eventually run out of things, but that's because we run out of things. And I hope that it does not come back to bite me that I did not stockpile and bunker all of the things.
Will.
I hope it doesn't, because if it does, then it turns out that we have bigger problems.
And I was thinking kind of along a similar line of, so right now there are supplies and people are rushing and they buy way more than they need.
Yes.
And looking and also people right now are being generally kind to one another, and you hear about people looking out for a neighbor, an elderly person, all good, obviously. But think a little further down the road. What if there's been all this stockpiling and the supplies start to run low, or there's a disruption for a time where they just aren't getting refilled?
Right.
And so you have a few people who have a ton of supplies, and then other people start to not have them. They start to run out. What's the behavior going to be then? I mean, is this moment of kindness going to continue, or do we suddenly see a scarier underbelly of human behavior?
Which is why I circle back to what we started with this original story about why I think that it is wise to initially shut down those price gougers and the hoarder mentality is because some people, I think that that's what they do to make themselves feel secure, and they're okay with going, oh yeah, there was some sort of downturn. I decided I needed to benefit from it. And I think that there's a fine line between planning and appropriately, because you're like, we needed to have. You knew there was going to be an economic downturn, so I made sure that I had a cushion and an emergency fund and those type of things so that we can go through this type of thing without panic versus I am now going to figure out a way to make money on everyone else because, there are so many scenarios where like we just got the information that all of our schools here in Minnesota are going to close down. So there are so many families that are already teetering on economic insecurity that I think if we can do what we can to step in now to balance some of these things out, then that's how we don't get to that scenario, Sam, so that it doesn't turn into, well, it's so worse because we didn't. Now these kids and these families are sick because somebody else decided that hand sanitizer should cost $125.
Right. Yeah, and I actually had a thought when I was that the first weekend when I started to kind of stock up, and I bought more than I normally would have. So that in that case, it was instead of one container of sanitary wipes, I bought 2.
That's fair, right?
And I did sort of bought in a similar style of a number of other things that I would normally buy. I just happened to buy a couple more, or one or two more of each of them. But then this last weekend is when I started to see people buy. Instead of 1 or 2 containers, 12 rolls of toilet paper.
Right.
Maybe they were buying 4.
Hopefully.
Right.
Crazy.
It was.
The store should limit it. The store should limit it. At the Target in Richfield where I go has signs up all over. They won't let anybody buy more than 2 24-packs of water. They won't let anybody buy more than 2 packs of toilet paper.
Yep.
I'm against bulk shopping to begin with. Like I won't belong to Costco. I won't belong to. I'm against a lot of these things. Like I live in the suburbs because I want to live in the city, and I don't like spread. Like I think a lot of it's bad for the environment. I think it's not a good way to live. Everybody trying to save the planet, and they do all these things that doesn't go with it. And things like Costco and buying in bulk and all that kind of consumerism is never good anyways. But the store should limit it, and nobody should ever behave that way anyways. I mean, this is where a harsh opinion of mine comes out. I don't think that in regular life, in this type of situation, it's absolutely important. And that's what I say. And the store should limit it. Nobody ever needs more than 2.
Here's
and if
one.
you're living in a big, huge house like that, stop it because the planet will explode.
Can I bring up?
Nobody needs it.
Before we pivot to our next thing, I did want to bring up a couple things. So my brother-in-law, who works at the Target, did also mention that they had enacted some other things, like you can't buy things like right now. I don't believe you can buy hand sanitizer, some other things online. So you have to come in and get it, and I think that's reasonable.
Smart, yeah.
And one of the things that made me sad, and another ripple effect, as someone who is not perfect at her desire to not ruin our planet, but I did notice that, for instance, I got an email because I got an email from everything from the rewards program I am at, the rewards program I am at the convenience store to the grocery store reward. Everybody sent me an email.
Every provider of everything.
Exactly. They're like, here's our plan. And that was fine. I did not mind. And I know. And since I'm curious, I read all of them. Including the one from JCPenney that said, here's what we're doing. Please come in. I was like, okay, I don't need another dress right now. But yes, JCPenney was like, thank you. Please continue to shop. But I did think it's interesting. One of the ones I thought was most interesting is that my local, our grocery store that also has Starbucks in it, talked about how, well, in our market, we're no longer letting you bring in your reusable cups, because they just didn't decide it was safe anymore. And they go, we're really sorry to hear that. If you had one of the, like a Starbucks cup, and this is what they said, they go, our partner is also saying that if you had one of those reusable mugs that you got a discount for, cool, we'll give you the discount, but you have to use a disposable cup now. And I got that, but
smart.
It's very smart. And it made me kind of sad that we have to right now, to preserve us, that, I know that that's not a long-term strategy, but it's all we have to do right now, and that's unfortunate.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of those single-use things are coming back into fashion, at least temporarily, just for the public good, and that's unfortunate. But again, I hope that we all
make up for the balance by not hoarding paper products. So,
Agreed. Agreed. In general, we don't have to hoard yet. Just give it a couple of weeks, maybe. You'll kind of see how that goes. As usual, our final segment is our segment, Does This Make Me Old? Does This Make Me Old? And I feel like this one is even more topical right now. We were going to talk about some other things like TikTok and some other things, and then we got blown out of the water with what was going on with Corona. So what's your story that you have for Does This Make Me Old, Judy?
So we are going to talk about fake news, in particular, people who are spreading fake information regarding, guess what, the coronavirus.
Imagine that.
So I did a Twitter poll back on March 12th, which was like Thursday of this week?
Mm-hmm.
And the question that I posed was, what's worse, people who don't wash their hands or people who flood Facebook with articles and links about how coronavirus is no big deal? And the final answer came up, 39% said people who don't wash their hands, and 61% said people who flood Facebook with fake news.
Interesting.
So people really do not like being spread around about this virus.
Can I tell you?
It's really, people are really fed up.
I do think that
Go ahead.
if I was going to interpret that response, I feel like I am bombarded with fake news, like it ends up in my phone and in my face, more than if you don't wash your hands, I cannot touch you. So like, I do think it's gross, but I thought people who didn't wash their hands before were already problematic, but
Well, it's bad. I mean, and then Vanity Fair has this article, because as we know, gotta love articles.
yes.
The coronavirus fake news pandemic. Very real. Trump, Fox, and pandemic grifters have helped mislead a public desperate for reliable information online and TV. Can social media platforms help stem the tide? I'm going to talk about some of the things in this article. I'm going to share one thing that I saw. I mean, I've seen many, but this one really got. Person who I'm Facebook friends with had this whole big thing about like what to do about coronavirus and like all these things that you should be doing. And like just one of the things that was written on this thing was like, if out in public, drink water. If you swallow water every 5 minutes, you will wash the virus down into your stomach and the acid will kill the virus.
I saw that as well. It made me frustrated. Right.
Crazy. It absolutely does. None of it was like, I was just like, are you banana pants? We have Alex Jones with InfoWars. He did, he was selling fluoride-free toothpaste that he advertises as a coronavirus cure.
Grifters.
And he said that the Pentagon and Homeland Security said it kills SARS and the Corona family. And he had to get it. It was like the Attorney General of New York said it was fraudulent, and it was like illegal and all this stuff. It had to get like removed. Alyssa Milano is out there sharing graphics with her Twitter followers, falsely describing measures curb the risk of catching it. She had to delete it because it had so many errors. I mean, there are just examples from, I don't want to just point out like Alex Jones. I know Alyssa Milano's a liberal. It's both people. It's all sides. It's your friends. It's my friends. That's why this is a pandemic. And that's why I think 61% of the people who answered my poll said it's almost worse than not washing your hands, because it's just like then people do stupid things and it's dangerous. And
and it spreads so much farther, so much more quickly. Than just the encountering somebody who didn't wash their hands. So the damage is exponentially, potential for damage is exponentially greater.
I agree. And the other thing that we had talked about, and why this was so timely for our Enthusiastic Woman show is that a lot of times we'll talk about, like, and we like to clown Gwyneth Paltrow, and we normally would go, she is the queen of misinformation, or not even completely misinformation, questionable information. It's always questionable information where we're like, okay, that's mostly wrong,
She's had some very bad claim.
Right.
She's
And so
done that. She's had to remove products because she's just been false about what she says they do.
and now
So
a
she
number
does that.
and a
Yeah.
number of people are now doing that, unfortunately over the coronavirus, where a number of the other stories that we've read were about the fact that a bunch of these multi-level marketing groups have used this, where they're like, hey, if you use these particular essential oils, it will provide you with additional safeguards against the coronavirus, or these vitamins and these other supplements and those kind of things.
Yes.
And although the people at the very top of the food chain aren't the ones sending it out, you do kind of wonder, where is the fine line far enough down in the chain that they sent out one of those backroom emails that said, hey, maybe you could use this as an opportunity because it'll help. You can say that these essential oils will help boost the immune system. So it's not flat out lying. It's just opportunistic as heck.
Yeah.
And those are a lot of the products that we normally clown anyway, going, does this sound like a real claim? I kind of don't think that this is something you can say.
I'm not sticking that in myself.
Right. Or smelling that or sniffing that. All of those things. And watching people capitalize on all of this, again, information that we do encourage you to go. There are a lot of sources out there that have real science and real information on keeping you and your family safe. We hope that you will find all of those things. And don't feel like you can immediately spend enough money, buy a certain water, drink a certain thing, as they are saying that right now there is no cure, there is no vaccination, there are any of those things. So don't think if you spend $150 and you smell like frankincense that everything's cool.
Fair. Fair.
I
Right.
think that's fair.
Oh, I want to say the influencers are
Yes.
also doing this.
Agreed.
BuzzFeed, again, another one of my good things, did a whole thing about influencers that were doing these videos and saying, this is again along the essential oils or crystals thing, but there's a bunch of Instagram influencers out there with their how to protect yourself from the virus / cure yourself from the virus methods, all false.
Right. Right. Well, we do encourage everybody there to stay healthy, to stay safe, to do what you can, and we hope that we can continue to figure out a way to continue to make our our episodes.
And watch our
In the
new
meantime.
YouTube channel. We're going to be doing laundry.
Yes. Agreed. I have lots of laundry. I have that child. Judy, I think that you would be the best. So Sam and I will do laundry. What would you like to do on our YouTube channel, Judy?
I can pet my cats, and I could also
Well
make
done.
a video of like my cats when they play. You know what would be good? My cat Chloe has a rivalry with a neighborhood dog.
Ooh,
who comes and
interesting.
stands right
Drama.
outside the window. Our windows go down to the floor, and Chloe will sit, and then the dog will come to the window, and they stare each other down.
Ooh.
And it's quite fascinating. It could almost be made into a cartoon, but maybe I should make it into a real cat versus dog YouTube show.
I like
that.
idea. Very well done, Judy.
And
Yes.
as a palate cleanser, I will occasionally balance my checkbook.
Well done. Well done. I
Yeah.
like that. Well, in the meantime, we do encourage you to be part of our Enthusiastic Women community. You can go to enthusiasticwomen.com. You can look for Enthusiastic Women on our Facebook page. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram as @iBirthSuccess. You can email the show. We're ibirthsuccess@gmail.com. And especially while everyone is socially isolating, we encourage you to leave us a voicemail on our Enthusiastic Women hotline. That's 612-276-2774, 612-276-2774. Are you guys still feeling okay?
I feel cleansed still.
Okay. All right. That works. What about you, Judy?
I'm still feeling very sparkling and isolated.
All right. Well done. Well,
Gotta flow.
we again encourage everybody to stay safe out there. We appreciate you being part of our Enthusiastic Women Network, and we will see you next time. And remember, if you're ever feeling less than enthusiastic, remind yourself, I birth success.